I know. It was only the third game of the season, Lars, but Barcelona coming away with, after game behind at Rayo Vallecano, coming away with a victory. How impressed were you by that?
It's impressive in the sense that they've had a tidy and uncomplicated start to the season on the pitch. Of course, off the pitch, nothing is ever tidy or uncomplicated at Barcelona. But the fact that that's the whole thing, the fact that the club continues to be, I mean, you call it a circus, but I feel like we're insulting many perfectly good circuses around the world who more or less have their stuff in order. But the fact that you have all this nonsense going on and they have racked up 3 pretty routine wins, I think is very good, and it's very good for Hansi Flick. It gives you a bit of breathing room. And for Flick, this really has been a crash course in Barcelona, right? You can take off we've had this fairly ridiculous situation of them signing Dani Olmo without having the room in the salary cap to actually sort of registering him. He was able to be involved in this game, but he had to sit out the last one. And you have all the sort of admin-related tomfoolery that you have to deal with. I mean, as I understand it, and Andy is free to correct me on this, I think they've managed to register him primarily because Andreas Christensen has gotten injured. So because gave them some wiggle room within the sort of salary spending cap because Christensen is injured, so they could take some of his wage allowance and put that on Olmo, and that's how they registered him. So they basically now have to find some money until Christensen is fit. Like the marketing department, like the clock is ticking. Like this Danish man will be able to walk soon. By then, we need to have some money. Profoundly absurd situation for what is supposed to be like what was once a club everyone looked up to be in. I digress. My whole point is that Hansi Flick has had to face the reality of being the Barcelona manager, which is you will have nonsense like this going on, but you have to win every game, more or less. The upside is the players you have available to you, of some of them are very, very good. And to make it like a full Barcelona house, he's been able to deploy some youngsters to great effect. But of course, that was the big negative of this game, which was that Marc Benal has done his ACL, which is a huge blow because he's been looking promising and looks like another find from the La Masia system. Very long-winded answer short. Good stuff. They were able to win 3 games amidst a lot of chaos, and that is the job at Barcelona. You need to try to find a way of making the team win, even though things are weird.
Yeah, Andy, you can see the huge ironic smile on Lars's face, can't you? Because
yes.
Only 3 games in, so we shouldn't really jump the gun or anything. Just before we get on to Hansi Flick, which is crucial to our conversation about Barcelona,
yes,
I feel that Dani Olmo coming off the bench, scoring the winner, surely that looks like what he was brought there to do.
Absolutely, and not just that, the fact that he played brilliantly as well. He made a massive difference coming on for Ferran Torres at half-time. Long-awaited debut. He's only been in the stand for a couple of games, but it feels like a lot longer because, of course, when you sign a player for a lot of money, you want to see him straight away. But because of that, maybe he had more of that, we've been feeding him on raw meat kind of vibe because he was so ready for this. It's interesting seeing a player who's excelled at the Euros, who's excelled in Germany, having obviously excelled in Croatia before with Dinamo Zagreb, come back. And when it's always been the way it's framed that he's come back to Barcelona, which technically is true because he's Catalan, but I think the fact that he is someone from a high quality player from outside the tent, and I compared it to Ivan Rakitic before, and he's a different player to Rakitic, but when Rakitic arrived in 2014, to have this high class player with a cosmopolitan palette who's played in a load of different countries, but has an understanding of the way that Barcelona play, for him to come in and add something different than what they've already got, albeit that they've got a really, really good, or better than good selection of academy players at the moment. I think that's very important. And you saw the different tempo, the different physicality. That's what he's adding. And to me, if you didn't know any of the players and you said one of these has just arrived from the Bundesliga, you'd have been able to spot him straight away. He had such a an impact on the intensity and the tempo. And of course, that brings us back to the Hansi Flick link, really, doesn't it? Because you've asked, how has he affected things so far? Well, he's gradually affecting things. It's going to take time. But I think the fact that Olmo has arrived and the fact that they're still looking to shift a few bits here and there. They're trying to get Jonathan Tah before deadline. I'm not sure if that will be possible, but that's the centre back that they're looking for. I think that they're trying to bring in a Bundesliga centre back is not a massive surprise, really, because of course Flick has ideas that are Barcelona compatible, but he won't want his team to play precisely like previous Barcelona teams. Now, we've seen Barcelona in these first 3 games, which the results have been good. The performances have been slightly uneven, and I think you would expect that at this point. But already we're seeing him move towards what he wants, Flick. So they've had, 65% possession in all of those games. You know, that wasn't always the case under, say, Luis Enrique as well. So he wants a team that dominates, but he's going to want a team that takes risks. And in terms of the tactical shape that they have, they are not quite there yet in terms of what he wants.
How different is what he brings to the table for Barcelona to what he didn't bring to the table for the German national team, Lars?
I think they're very different contexts, for sure. I think the key is what Andy just said about how he has different ideas, but they're Barcelona compatible. You know, he's not Big Sam, is he? Like, he's pretty happy for them to. It's going to be possession folk. He wants them to control the game. It's going to be a pressing style. I just think, like, as much as, like, I inevitably make fun of their registration votes for Dani Olmo, because it is a slightly ludicrous situation, Andy is bang on. Like, he will add something very, very useful to that team because he is a little bit different. Whenever you see Dani Olmo come on and play for the Spanish national team, it's so clear that he adds a little bit of directness, as you say, but also a little bit of, like, bravery. He's a guy who doesn't mind taking a shot from range occasionally. He's a guy who doesn't. His first thought isn't always, is there a short pass I can play here to keep possession? Like, he will take on a bit of extra responsibility and break the pattern a little bit. So even though he is technically a La Masia boy, he has something slightly different. Maybe the years spent in the wilderness of the Croatian league sort of hardened him up or something. Maybe this is like a small child that you put out to the wolves and then he comes back much tougher. Maybe this is how that goes. I don't know. But yeah, he will add a sort of slightly different dynamic to that. And the other thing, when we talk about Barcelona's start to the season being impressive and this giving Flick some breathing space and some come to work, they're missing some pretty big guys here, like people who've been absent for a while. But like, this team would look very different if Gavi and Frenkie de Jong were available. You know, that midfield would look very different if they were. Araujo is missed at the back, so you know he's not quite fighting with both hands behind his back here, Flick. But he's having to adjust. He's having to play a lineup that's not going to be what he fantasized about in the summer, and he's managed to find solutions to that.
Yeah, I think that's right. And if there's a hole at the moment, it probably is a Frenkie de Jong or Gavi shaped one. I would say we know what Gavi adds, but interestingly, the best comment that I've heard on Barcelona's tactics, and let's be clear, they're really good in the second half at Rayo. First half, if they play like that, they're not winning anything this season. And that is what we're talking about in terms of teething troubles and getting closer to what he wants. And the best comment that I heard is they've got this really interesting addition to the Liga coverage this year where they when they have the cooling breaks. I'm not sure how it will work when they haven't got cooling breaks, but they have a mic that goes in so you can hear what the coach is saying.
Oh, wow.
So you got Inigo Perez, the Rayo coach, saying the gap between their defence and midfield is enormous. So basically, 3 passes and we're in. So bear that in mind. And everyone's sitting there watching on TV going, you know what? He's right. He's absolutely right. And that was
the opposition.
But that was the huge problem for that. Look, honestly, if they need the opposition coach to work out what their problems are, they've got a bit of an issue. But I think it's worth talking about how Inigo has correctly identified where the join is, the rather uneasy join is between Xavi's Barcelona and Hansi Flick's Barcelona, because that tells you inadvertently just how passive that Xavi's Barcelona were, really. And that was something that became a stick to beat him with as time went by. Now, obviously, Barcelona got rid of him because he dared criticise the omnipotence of the president, basically. But I think what we expected from Xavi as a Barcelona coach, because he outlined his philosophy for ages before he actually became coach, is something close to the sort of philosophy that he played in. You know, you employ him and you think this is a guy who's from the club, who understands the club, who understands the way we want to play. But it became pretty results-based pretty quickly. And now you have a defence that's kind of out of habit, quite deep-lying still. And then there's this massive gap in midfield. And the second half, they managed to make it a little bit more compact. And that is something that Flick really wants to work on. Now, we know from his previous successes in club football with Bayern, he likes to play up the pitch. They like to be, I don't know, risky to the point of recklessness. It's almost like turbo de Turby, really. So I think sometimes we can criticise clubs for looking at coaches that are from all sorts of different profiles. And I know we're going to come on to Bayern Munich in a bit, for example. But like, when you look at Barcelona being in the market for De Zerbi, which didn't happen in the end, and Flick, there's a lot of philosophical similarities there. So obviously they're looking to head in one particular direction and they're looking to ditch what was the really quite sterile football they were playing under Xavi a lot of the time.
I would say, just add briefly, that there's also just probably a more sort of basic and obvious reason why you have a bit of an issue with the gap between defense and midfield. And that is the nature of the midfield, because I just mentioned the guys who are missing. But you're playing with Pedri and Bernal, who's 17, as your deep lying midfielders. And that's not, again, no one looks at the Barcelona squad and thinks, yeah, that's the midfield we want when everyone's fit. Like, it's not quite ideal. And I wonder, I mean, obviously, I was about to say it would be nice for them if they signed someone, but very obviously they can't do that because there isn't the room in any kind of, and if he wants a central defender as well, that's not something you can really do. And with Bernal, who's looked really sharp at the age of just 17, doing an ACL, picking up an ACL injury late in this game, you know, that does leave Flick with a bit of a conundrum going forward as to what that midfield is meant to look like. And whether it'll be Marc Casado, another midfielder who's 20, but is basically a La Masia guy as well, to come in. There is just a simple personnel issue here about who is your holding midfielder right now.
I guess the short-term solution is let's lean on the academy because A, it's great for PR, and B, they're athletic. So that ticks a lot of the boxes for Hansi Flick. It does mean, like, tactically you're going to lack a bit, because in terms of what he wants, it's going to take longer to get there, I think. But in terms of short-term fixes, having a lot of young athletic players in your team definitely helps with adding the intensity.
Lamine Yamal, and we haven't even mentioned him.
No.
But he's got to fit
He needs a week off.
No, not for that age group. But he has to fit into Hansi Flick's plan, or is it the other way around?
He will.
Possibly the other way around?
I suppose somewhere in the middle, because he's such an important player. But look, I think he's someone who, when you talk about players who can give Barcelona something a little bit different, he always has been that. So that's why he's so extraordinary. He's someone who does look for the pass that cuts a load of players out the game from a wide area. He's not afraid to cross the ball. I mean, it's something that, why he's made such an impact for Barcelona is because he's unlike anything they have had for a very long time. So that's why he's so useful.